Today we will review the cranial and the facial bones. The cranial is divided into two main classifications. The neurocranium, which is the upper and back part of the skull. In this zone, we have the cranial bone. There is also sutures. These are immovable joints between the skull bones. We have two main sutures. We have the parietal, and we also have the corneal suture, which we will identify once we turn the skull around. If we flip this here, we can easily see the palatine bone. This is a horizontal plate which is behind the maxilla bone of the upper jaw. These are two paired bones joined together down a midline of the upper mouth and the median palatine suture. We will now turn around and come to the front of the skull. Here, we will see the parietal suture as well as the frontal bone. As we look at the skull from the side, we will notice there is the sphenoid bone, which is now right below the zygomatic bone. Then we'll come over to the mandible. We'll move up to see the maxilla. We will now start moving in to the nasal cavity, which contains three bones, which is the ethmoid bone, maxilla, which we mentioned, the palatine bone, which we mentioned, which is beneath, and the vomer bone. Vomer bone, hard to identify in here, very small. Nasal bone, up in here, where we have our sinuses cavity. If we turn the skull and we look, there's this tiny little hole that is known as the external acoustic meatus. This is found in the temporal bone, which allows for the opening of the ear canal. On the opposite side of the skull, we still have the right parietal bone as far in the frontal bone. The very back is the occipital bone. We'll now flip the skull around. Oops. If you notice, there is this huge hole at the base of the occipital bone. This is a very important landmark, also known as the foramen magnum. This is a large hole that provides space for the spinal cord to pass through. Altogether, there are 8 cranial bones and 14 facial bones. Thank you. My name is Marlene Mendez. This is my video on the skull and cranial bones.